Good morning. Thank you for coming. Try to step in the big shoes left by Ian Livingstone, so it will be interesting. Let's talk about crowdfunding. I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Thomas Bidaux. I'm a consultant in the video game industry. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, and I really like crowdfunding, both from a personal perspective. I've backed way too many projects on Kickstarter and other platforms, but also from a business perspective and an opportunity for creators to find an audience, extra funding, all sorts of things. I also more a person who's data-driven. I like numbers. I like understanding phenomena through numbers rather than through headlines. And back in 2013, I started to look at large scale. What numbers, crowdfunding, what does it mean? What does it mean for the smaller project? What does it mean for the bigger project? So I started to collect data and share this data across. And by sharing the data, I also got involved into the more hands-on, practical, day-to-day management of crowdfunding campaigns with a number of partners. So I had a talk last year about these things. I'm going to cover a number of important elements to understand crowdfunding before I go into the numbers and the latest trends. These things are basically essentials from crowdfunding. These don't change much from year on year, but also in terms of the kind of projects. There's a couple of video game specifics, but the truth for like how crowdfunding functions is kind of like the same regardless of the nature of your project. Okay, sorry about the layout. I'll show you good to read that. So number one is crowdfunding is not about people who like your project, it's people who love your project. Love is essential. People who kind of find your project kind of interesting are not going to back your project. It's people who actually love it that will support you. That means that certain projects are kind of on the verge of being suitable for crowdfunding, but they are not necessarily strong enough in the emotions they create with their audience to actually work for crowdfunding. So it doesn't work for all kind of projects. The other important principle is momentum. It's all about momentum. It's all about getting 20% of your goal in the first 48 hours. So that means that when you go to crowdfunding, it's about existing audience who are deeply engaged and deeply interested into your project. That's how you succeed in crowdfunding, having an existing audience. The other component is for video games, you need in 2018, 2019 now, you need to show the game. Back in 2012, when it started to explode with Double Fine Adventures and this kind of large project that people were seeing for the first time, based on a pitch that was just described, this is no longer the case. You need to show the game. My go-to example is John Romero, lots of fans, very established game designer, went to Kickstarter, say, give me money for my first-person shooter, didn't show it, they didn't get funded. And that's true for everybody now. So you need to show the game, and it's even better if you have a demo for your game. That's kind of like one of the baseline for crowdfunding. The last thing on games is that, you can't read here, is there's three things that don't work with very, very, very rare exceptions. Games that are free to play, games that are on mobile, and games for kids, or any combination thereof. There's lots of reasons for that. There's lots of reasons for the exceptions to work, but these exceptions are extremely rare. I will always, by default, advise not to go to crowdfunding if you fit one of those three criteria. Also something I mention all the time, stretch goals, the idea to actually ask for more money to unlock more things from inside your game. These things need to happen once you've reached your success. Don't announce your stretch goals. It's very, very important. And last thing that I was talking about last year that I think is really important is the campaign timing. Back in 2012, you could do your campaign when you had the description of your game. You had just the pitch. Now you need to be much further inside your production to be able to get crowdfunded. That means that we'll see games that are already mostly funded going to crowdfunding. We'll see games that need some extra polish, but the essentials are already there. Or they need an extra platform, an extra component going to crowdfunding campaign. It also means that because you need to be further along inside the development process and the production, that you will see more projects actually go to early access, which is a lot of work, but maybe an easier endeavor than the crowdfunding campaign, being an option for a lot of projects. And then the last bit is a lot of projects going to crowdfunding don't necessarily go there for the money. They go there for the increased visibility. They go there for the engagement with the community. They go there for testing out the ideas rather than purely the financial aspect. So this being said, let's talk about crowdfunding and numbers. I look at Kickstarter numbers mostly. I'll show a bit of the Fig numbers as well, but Kickstarter is by far the biggest platform for crowdfunding for video games, for games in general actually. And this will show you the different trends in terms of how much money globally has been raised for video games in the past few years. So 2015 was the best year ever for video games with $41 million raised. And since the past 3 years, it's oscillating between 15 and $17 million. There's a slight decrease year on year from 2017 and 2018, but it's not necessarily a huge drop. So crowdfunding is still a drop in the ocean in terms of overall funding for the game industry. But I like to look at the number of projects because this is what it gets real for a number of people. If you look at the number of projects that were funded year on year, we had 352 projects, video games projects funded in 2018. And it's not very far from the 358 from the previous year or the 388 of 2016. That means that we have about a very stable number of a project a day getting funded on Kickstarter. And what's also very interesting is the overall number of projects is actually dropping. There's fewer people trying to get funded on the crowdfunding platform. You can see that by the number of projects that didn't get funded, which kind of dropped since 2015. So it could be a number of things. It could be the quality is increasing of the people who try to go crowdfunding. It's also people realize it's more difficult, so actually they veer away. It could be it's less the flavor of the month. It's less hot and hype to go to crowdfunding. The reality is more projects in some proportions get funded now than a long time before, since 2013. And if you look at the scale of the projects, which is also very interesting, how much money do those projects raise? Well, there's a very small minority of projects raising more than $500,000. It's there were 5 last year, 3 the previous. 2016 there were 4. So it's kind of less than half a dozen projects every year raise more than $500,000. The vast majority of the projects, they raise less than $10,000. But you still get a good portion of projects that raise between $10,000 and $50,000. And between 50 and 500, you also get about 50 projects a year. It's kind of like a project a week get between 50 and 500. This is also a good idea of how much money is there and what's the likelihood to fund a whole project through Kickstarter. It's very unlikely. That's where we're going to more complement budgets or projects that need less money because they are hobbyist project into that range of less than $10,000. It's mostly hobbyists looking for extra money to maybe improve the graphics, find a sound designer, pay for the music. But you still have a number of projects that go to Kickstarter despite the amount not necessarily funding the whole project because they get some money. And they get more attention, the more engagement, and it's a good process for them into their development cycle. Everybody here is aware with who Fig is? Who doesn't know Fig? Yeah, Fig is a platform specialized in video games. They launched in 2015 with 2014, 2016, 3 years ago, 2016, with a look at becoming a video game focused crowdfunding platform, and they offer both Kickstarter-like rewards and Revenue share as well as an option for people who fund the project. They've been relatively prominent. In the first 2 years of their existence, they had multi-million projects, but in 2018, they failed to raise a significant amount of money. The whole of FIG last year was less than $500,000. Also interesting, like looking at where the ecosystem lives and exists, there's only been 6 projects funded last year on FIG. It's a bit less than half of the project that trying to get funded over there. So I would say a lot of crowdfunding is still massively on Kickstarter. And the last bit of numbers I wanted to share is more about the currency. So Kickstarter doesn't allow everybody to launch on their platform. There's a number of requirements. One of them is to be established in one of the authorized countries. And to launch in that country, you need to launch in a certain currency. So here you should see the number of projects that got funded in 2017 compared to 2018 per currency platform. So all European countries with the euro currency will be bundled together into that euro category. England is going to be in GBP, Canada with Canadian dollars, etc., etc. So you can see like Sweden, Denmark, Norway all have their own currencies and are separated from the euro there. But it's interesting to see that last year there were more projects funded through euros than the year before. And the same is true for GBP. So there's been more projects funded in England on Kickstarter last year than the year before. So this is where some growth is happening. Good. So this was for the numbers. I also wanted to go over a few kind of like changes in terms of, or like the top level advice, most common recommendations, and what it means in 2019. First, talk about timing. When people ask me when to launch a campaign, so purely looking at the data and when people launch, when they are the most successful, it's better to launch during the week. And not have the weekend behind you, so Monday through Thursday, with Tuesday having the best results. When to end a campaign is through Tuesday to Friday, with Thursday having the best results. Most campaign will do like a 30 days length. I would recommend to go between 30 and 35, but not go beyond under 30, and not beyond 35. The most money is raised between the first 2 days and last 2 days. All the time in between is good. You gather some more attention. People discover new projects every day. But making a 60-day campaign is not going to make you twice as much money as a 30-day campaign, because this is not where the most attention goes, and people get tired. A 1 month's attention is already kind of a lot of work. It's a good length. Going less than 30 days will has its own challenges in terms of people getting their payroll on a monthly roll and maybe not being able to meet the payday in time for you to support your campaign, but also in terms of word spreading out and getting the good attention. So optimal length tends to be between 30 and 35 days. Mentioned that the beginning and the end of the month is a good time to start and end your campaign because people get paid at these dates. Talking about currency, some projects really believe that you should launch in US dollars because this is where the biggest audience for Kickstarter is. Data doesn't prove that launching in US dollars is actually more likely to make you successful or make you raise more money. So unless you want to raise a large amount of money, I would stick to your own local currency because the admin is much simpler. There's new campaign tools that have been allowed in Kickstarter over the years, and I think they're needing to be used more and more. Google Analytics, you can plug directly into your Kickstarter page. Referrals is a tool that Kickstarter allows, and this is more and more we see small-scale paid performance marketing for Kickstarter campaign having a significant impact on the results. The Kickstarter Live tool is a way for you to stream from your Kickstarter page with a video. This is a really nice tool. This has proven to have good results. People get more engaged with the projects. There's also a strong social proof as people see people back in real time the projects. Then there's the Discord happening, being added to the ecosystem, both as a channel and as a way to reward the backers. You can see more and more use of Discords around crowdfunding, sometimes ahead of a campaign to basically crystallize that attention and people really engage with the game to basically put them in order so you can, when you launch your campaign, they are all ready to support you. And the last thing is the use of the Steam page. Most Kickstarter campaigns will have will be for a PC version of the game. The Steam page is a very, very strong tool for you to maximize the success of your game later on. Here it's more about using the Kickstarter campaign to leverage your Steam page and make sure that when you launch your Kickstarter campaign, you have a Steam page live, ready for you to share and basically double on people backing you and people adding you to your wish list on Steam. That increase your chance of success. And that's it for the numbers and the best practices. I think it's interesting to see Kickstarter and crowdfunding staying stable over the years, still a good option for certain projects. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach me out. I can give you a very blunt opinion about whether I think your project is ready or not for crowdfunding, or suitable at all. Time for questions? Questions?
It's great to thank you, my colleagues, coming to your workshop.
I do workshops in February with Yuki. Thank you.
But I know the success rate. The success rate with campaigns, does it skew it? Because I've seen a lot of people on Kickstarter where they're kind of lowballing the campaign, where they go like, oh, well, let's make the success level $1,000 or £1,000, and clearly they need way more than that. And then suddenly they're like, you know, they might be successful on the Kickstarter thing, they might raise, you know, $2,000, but that's not actually what they were looking for, and they were hoping to get $5,000. Does that skew the success?
Yes. So one of the biggest, most important decisions you make on the campaign is where to set the goal, and there's two things kind of like pulling in there. The first one is you want your goal as low as possible to make sure you're successful, but you don't want to be so low that by making like a 200% success, you still make no money in terms of the scale of your project. You also convey certain values in terms of the quality of your game. If you say, I want $1,000, people will say, oh, okay, it's a small game. They will not necessarily take it very seriously. So there's a bit of a very difficult balancing act between asking the lowest amount of money possible, but still drag it as high as possible, because that crystallize how much money you're going to raise eventually into the campaign. What I tell people is try to measure your audience and people who are into that, you know, I love you niche, and try to use that as like this number is you're going to be at 20%. What if you have 5 times more backer than that nugget you have at the very beginning? Maybe that's your goal. But it's a difficult exercise.